Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Zhanna Blazej. Zhanna is a powerhouse in the content strategy world, a marketing visionary who bridges storytelling with strategy in a way that's both human and high converting. As the creator of the conversion method, she's helped entrepreneurs and thought leaders transform everyday insights into compelling content that actually moves the needle. Her deep experience across sales, marketing, and coaching makes her uniquely positioned to help business owners craft messages that connect and convert, all while staying aligned with their authentic voice. What makes Zhanna especially innovative is her development of Iris, the AI powered engine behind the conversion method, designed to radically simplify and speed up the content creation process without sacrificing clarity or brand voice. She's on a mission to eliminate content overwhelm and help entrepreneurs scale with storytelling that doesn't burn them out. Whether you're a seasoned founder or just starting your visibility journey, Zhanna brings a rare mix of strategic sharpness and emotional depth that helps her clients cut through the noise and speak straight to the heart of their audience. You can find Zhanna on Facebook by searching Zhanna Blazej or on Instagram at Zhanna Blazej or by going to her website, zhannablazej.com. Hello, Zhanna. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you so much for that incredible introduction and for having me on today. It's a true privilege and honor to be here.
I am so excited because you are also a close friend of mine, and this has been a conversation I have been very excited about having for a while now. So let's just dive in. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Zhanna Blazej?
It's a really good question, and it can go into so many different facets of life. But to simplify it, what success looks like to me is living the expression of what I believe and value inside myself. So my life has to reflect who I am truly and authentically, what I believe, what moves me, and what I value the most.
I love that because one of the core things of achieving success is understanding where you are today, what moves you and empowers you, and how that then transfolds into every other aspect of your life. Because if you're not feeling fulfilled in your life, are you going to end up moving the needles and communicating well and all these other things? So, love it.
Absolutely.
So, the first question I want to really dive into you with is, as I mentioned in the intro, you created the conversion method, which really helps entrepreneurs, content creators, everyone use their voice to make that impact, connect with individuals on a different level while moving the needle as well. What led you to create the conversion method, and was there a moment or experience that made it click for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was built from necessity. I, just like every other entrepreneur, new business owner, or seasoned business owner, has a similar pain point: marketing. Having to create content, put out marketing, whether it's to their email list, newsletters, dialing in messaging on sales pages. It just takes so much time and energy and is never a fun hat or one that any of us expected to wear when we started our businesses. I don't know about you, but marketing has always been a pain point for those, especially in the service provider space, because so many of us go into business wanting to serve, to be of service to others, to live and work in our zone of genius. But you have to market yourself. You have to be able to be visible, to sell yourself, to sell your offers, and to do so in such a way where the person on the other side doesn't ever feel sold to. Time is a huge one. It's a really huge time suck to spend time making content from scratch. A lot of the time, people lack the ability to connect creatively in any given now moment. And so, the creative energy that it takes and the mind, I would say the mental load rather, that is having to come up with content, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And then
Mhm.
the worst part is, let's say you write one piece of content and then no one engages, nothing happens, and you feel deflated. So I really set out to first solve my own pain point. I wanted to be able to consistently create content that was valuable, not just when I felt inspired,
Mhm.
but when I actually needed to. And that was all the time, every day. And so I was seeking the answer to that, had no idea what I was doing. I did have a background in marketing and sales, but when you start your own business, there's this weird thing that happens. It's like we get amnesia and we forget our actual skill sets because now the business has this identity tied to your own. And so the first thing I had to do is remove that identity and step into the role of CEO. Identify the problem. It's a marketing problem. I need to be able to show up online consistently. I had a son at this point, and as we all know, there's not a lot of time as a parent to do much of anything, let alone wear all the hats in your business. At this time, there was this thing called ChatGPT that came on the scene, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, AI. And I started kind of playing with AI and wondering, well, how could I use this to help streamline content creation? The other thing many of you have probably noticed that AI tends to give you output that sounds very generic, very robotic, and is easy to spot that it is AI. So I didn't like that piece of it. So I set out to utilize my understanding of marketing and being able to extract day-to-day experiences in reflection to test to see if I could create a system that would help me simplify my marketing process. And in doing so, within a week, I put out 6 pieces of content, having tested this framework, and generated 23 leads and over multiple 5 figures in revenue, as if out of thin air. And that's when it hit me that there was something that I had cracked open here, and I needed to turn this into an offer that could help other people do that. Because when you take something that you're good at and the results that you're able to get for yourself in business, that's one thing. But when you can replicate that with your clients, then you have proof of concept. It's a viable product. And so I set out to create my own custom interface using the new OpenAI function at that time, where I was able to go in and actually program a custom GPT that allowed the user to simply emote into it daily reflections, completely raw, unscripted. I'm talking just you're having a girl chat on your phone. And then the AI, because we do prime it to understand your business and understand you as a brand, your voice tone, to then the output is framed with persuasion, copywriting levers already built into it that formulate it so that it attracts the right person, belief shifts in the copy, and invites them to the call to action so that it gets you leads and sales without having to have to learn how to be a copywriter.
Well, and it sounds like it's not just about making it copywritten or like sound a certain way. You've built something that also makes people feel like, hey, yeah, I'm saving time. However, this sounds like exactly how I would say a story, or if I was on the speaking stage talking about this story or this experience, this is how I would say it. You know, I'll go back a little bit here as well. As Jonna and I met th- what, like 2 years ago,
Oh,
three
yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago at this point, and we became friends. And I remember reaching out to her and I was like, hey, I want to do this and that. And we had had certain conversations, so I knew what Jonna's background was, what her experience was. And it was really of, hey, I want content that converts. I want to be able to express myself. Because, like you said a few minutes ago as well, is like, there's not always hats we expect to wear. As a globally ranked podcast host, I have my podcast. I have things. I know everything under the sun when it comes to podcasting. But there was still that initial wall of like, okay, besides podcast content,
Mm.
what is something that it's meeting the other person where they are, bridges that gap, makes them feel like they're having the conversation with me while being able to not spend hours writing this content, figuring out what is actually working and what's not. Because I would talk to other people and they're like, yeah, just post. And I'm like, okay, but posting and just throwing something at a dart, like dart at a dart wall here, dartboard, is different than posting with purpose, whether that is personal content or something for your business. And so we start going down that rabbit hole of just like, okay, how easy can this be? And how fluid can we make it as well, where it does sound like me? Because the issue I'd always had, obviously I knew AI had to be primed to you. But
Yeah.
even sometimes companies will say like, "Oh yeah, this AI will be built for you." But they're taking it from something that isn't actually you, and it spreads out. So I remember us having that conversation and being like, oh no, like this is actually what it is, what it's supposed to be like, what's supposed to feel like working with someone in that space. And then you were like, here's this post. And it took like 5 minutes for us to create it. And
Yeah.
then I remember voice memoing you quickly after, like I think it was like the next day, and someone had immediately reached out to me and was like, hey, can we talk on the phone? And I'm like, someone actually responded to my post wanting to talk on the phone. Like before that, it was very informational, it was same like points I was trying to make but being said differently. And so for me, I was getting a lot of referrals or people coming in different ways, but from organic content that I was putting out, I was not getting it the same way. And now I get people seeing the content all the time and are like, oh, yeah, like, can we jump on a call? That really resonated with me.
You're talking about the um, spray and pray method that most people use in content, and there's really no strategy, there's no rhyme or reason. They're kind of just winging it. And that's fine. But it's the same thing as throwing spaghetti at a wall, hoping some of it sticks, and sometimes it does. You get lucky. But when you get really dialed in and strategic and intentional with your content, which is what we did, the same thing happens. And it wasn't just with you, Olivia. Like I see this every single time. And it's really fascinating because there are nuances. If you're brand new to the internet space, you've never posted anything in your life, could it happen? Yes, we could just create this like fire piece of content and then it happens to hit the right eyes at the right time and you get a sale from it. However, I'm going to be practical here and say if you don't have a brand, you've never posted online, you've never run your business, it might take you a little bit. We're going to have to go through the initial building your brand voice and thought leadership and getting you engagement and building your audience before you start seeing an influx of conversions. But it's still possible with really dialed in messaging, which is what we create with Iris. And to piggyback off of that, when you do have a brand, I've worked with a lot of clients who they've been nurturing and nurturing. They've given so much value. That's all that they've done. They've never actually strategically written copy that invited people to next steps, whether that's because they're afraid of sales, they don't want to sound pushy, they don't want to feel like, the snake oil salesman. There's just so many connotations about why, but sales is sacred. People can't get the result they need unless they have your service, and they can't buy the service if they don't know it exists. So just removing any sort of judgment around sales and just putting it out there so that you can make the impact that you can make and make the money. Every single time that I have helped someone use Iris to create a piece of content, especially if they have an established audience, if not within like hours, sometimes minutes, they will generate not just one, but multiple leads, oftentimes from either the email that they sent or the first post that they put out that was really dialed in and strategic.
And that being said, too, you see the same thing in the podcasting space. And something I work through with a lot of clients is, okay, what is your strategy? What are your goals? Right?
Mm.
These were conversations we were having, and the same conversation I have with individuals when it comes to either being a guest on a podcast, starting their own, or growing it, is like, what's the strategy behind it? What are your goals? How do you want people to resonate with it? And I think whether it's in the podcasting space or social media, a lot of times, especially with, being able to do Facebook lives now and LinkedIn lives or YouTube, like, it kind of gets jumbled. And people forget that it isn't just about showing up, it's how you want to show up and how you want to tell your story and resonate with the people on the other side who are listening to that content, who are reading it. And having a really strong CTA and call to action is important in that, in understanding like what is your goal in that post as well.
Yes.
And that leads me to my next question of, what separates in your eyes good content from conversion content, especially in a world that we're overwhelmed by content on a daily basis. You could open so many different apps and see content.
There's a number of elements that go into this. Is what I see happen a lot is people will share a story, they're good writers, and people will consume the content, it will inspire them, they'll get comments and likes, but they always tell me the same pain point. I'm not converting anything. And if I just do a quick synopsis overview of their content, I'm like, I've not seen you make a direct call to action in any of these. You're being vague, you're hiding, you're placating. You're not directly saying, hey, I have this thing, I'd love to invite you into it. That's the first thing that I see that separates like the inspirational content and the content that converts. Second, what I see is when experts lose themselves in their expertise and write from their lens. What that means is instead of speaking to the lived experience of the ideal client for whom you have a solution in your offer, you talk about the features or you talk about the industry or how you perceive things. And it's very much I centered versus them centered. So if you can write, let's say you're a really good writer and you take a step back and say, what were they thinking in that moment? What are they feeling the moment right before they need you? And then paint a picture cinematically, doing so as if you're talking to one person. So, writing the post with a conversational tone, writing it with the intention of belief shifting. So, you literally pull the person in to feel like they're part of the movie that you are producing in this piece of content, and then showcasing to them that you see them, you get them, clearly identifying, I see your pain, and here's a solution that I can provide for you. And if this, again, soft, we're not pressuring anybody. And if this is the type of solution that you've been looking for, just send me a DM. I'd love to connect. No pressure, no sales. Let's just see if it's a fit to work together. Those are the key differences.
And that being said, as well, one thing you just brought up was the fact of resonating and telling a story and thinking about where they were, but also being able to pull from your own lived experiences to where you
Yes.
are now, represent what you as an individual as well. I remember when we started, I was doing on at least my personal Facebook, which Zhanna got me out of my own way with that, as I say in my TED talk of like getting out of your own way. I had the idea that, yeah, Facebook, which does not work the same with a business page, but like we'll have a business page, Instagram business account, and then keep my personal account separate. LinkedIn works differently because I have both a business page and professional, but it gets the same kind of content on both. But going back to Facebook, I was like, I am not diving into this personal side. And one thing you said to me is like, well, how many people are finding you? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of annoying because a lot of people are adding me personally. However, I'm posting a lot of not personal things or things I wouldn't want family members to see, but I was like, I don't want to be taken non professional because I'm not posting. Like, that's not the purpose I want. And you were like, people will resonate with that, people will connect with that. And so for Facebook, I started pulling back the curtain and started diving into uh, like working with Zhanna with Iris, creating Iris and using it for the post I want to write. And like 2 months goes by, the number of people following, the amount of like content people were resonating with really expanded. But then we had a conversation where it's like, okay, the numbers actually started going a little bit the other way solely from the purpose of I then went down the rabbit hole mentally myself as an entrepreneur of like, this is working. Now let's like tenfold it and like get optimize the results. But I stopped posting the personal stuff for a while, or very few and far in between. And we had a conversation where it was like, no, no, people resonate with that. They're watching that. Still post the personal stuff. Leverage our Iris. Like sometimes now, I remember when I created a post about where I was relocating to.
Mhm.
I went into Iris. I had the idea mentally of like what I want to say, tied into Coast Guard terms. This make it fun, make it short, but I wanted to make sure it was also optimized and was said in a way that was like all my goals that like in my head I could vision, but I was like, I need a second like person to tell me, yeah, this is the best way to say it, or give me options, because like I was thinking of things, but I couldn't put it necessarily pen to paper. And so I go in with that, even with personal things, and I'll be like, hey, here's the points I want to make. Here's the feeling I wanted to have. Can you help me create a few options? But what I've also seen is like, you can go too far the other way, where then you're like, wait, is this becoming white noise? So there is that level, and I'd love to hear more on your thoughts of like when you start doing content that is conversion content, where to know that line is of like also showing other pieces of your life.
Absolutely. And I'm a big supporter of conversion content can still also tie in your personal stories. There's a nuance to it. But what you're describing is when people go too far into just selling in all of their posts. That's when, like you said, it becomes white noise and people tune you out because they go into overwhelm. It's just too much. When you're posting, there's another strategy. There's usually a cadence, especially if you're launching like I do or you do, where you want to go for a 2 week nurture period. You're just putting out value content, storytelling content, your thought leadership, and you're still sprinkling in sales content, but it's usually the best formula is like a 3 to 1, three of you giving without asking for anything, and then one ask, whether that's like you did 3 posts today. One was a short form, one was a story, one was a reel, and then you sent an email and made an ask. It doesn't matter what format, but every day we should be selling, and every day we should be nurturing, and every day we should be giving so much of our insights and our thought leadership so that it all levels out. You're pouring into the bucket of reciprocity, but you're also having intentional conversations to move the needle forward. You're being direct in your calls to action in the posts where you are inviting people into a sale. Now, if you're in launch and it's a week and a half period, 99% of the content is going to be really hard hitting sales content. And then you're going to sprinkle in some personal story content as well. But then you have to, once done with that launch period, really pull back on your sales content and give a majority of nurture content time so that you let your audience have some time to recuperate. And like, people buy from people when they can see you in your day-to-day experience, like you were sharing. You are always working with somebody that has resonance with you.
Hmm.
So usually what that means is they in some way, shape, or form have had similar life experiences. And typically when I work with somebody, they are me just a few steps behind me. So like we have a lot of resonance. I had know nothing about podcasting. I can help you with what I'm helping you with. And then when it's time for me to launch my podcast, I'm going to find you, the expert, because you are ahead of me in that. But we have resonance and it matches. And so when I shared, you felt resonance with what I was saying and vice versa. And so the same thing applies for everybody listening, is you have to be able to pull from your day-to-day experiences. And I have to say this because everybody overcomplicates content, overcomplicates everything, which is why I created Iris. You don't have to learn how to write persuasion copy. But it's only as good as the prompt that you give it. And I don't mean it has to be a perfectly written prompt, but it has to be real, raw, and true to you, showcasing the way that you view the world, your unique insights and perspectives, and the texture by which you perceive reality, and then share that to formulate it into a post that positions you as an authority, positions you as someone that they're like, oh, yes, I wish I could have said it that good, but that's literally how I feel on the inside. That's what resonance is. And a lot of the times you'll get chills when you read something that is emotionally moving. It needs to be emotionally provoking because people decide based on their emotions and then back up the decision with logic. And it has to tie everything back to I see you, I get you. And when you're ready, let's chat. Period. That's it. It's so simple. If everybody here just took a minute and within the last 24 hours, if I was on a call with you, this is exactly what would happen. And Olivia can attest to this. Tell me something that happened in the last 24 hours that made you pause and say, huh, it made you stop and reflect on life and tell me that story and why and how did it make you feel. We take that raw insight and turn it into content gold. It's literally that simple when you have
And
Iris.
I remember too when we started working together. That's exactly questions Zhanna would ask, but she'd also be like, "Okay, I want you to start writing down like when you feel those moments. Tell that story." And she's demo of me like I would voice memo because we were friends, so I'd be like, okay, randomly end of day, this is what came to mind. Or she'd ask me a question and I'd be like, yeah, here's some things I have on this or my thought on that. And she'd take that and literally plug it into Iris and come back to me and she's like, okay, what about this? I'm like, yeah, okay, here we go. And so it's like, and I love the point you also brought up there is, I think something that gets missed as entrepreneurs sometimes when we're wearing all the hats is understanding where your strengths are and
Yeah.
what is okay to ask for help on, and understand that it is going to move the needle, right? Money comes up as a big constraint with individuals sometimes. But it's like whether it's creating content for social media or email blasts or like a podcast, at some point you have to put an investment into it to
Yeah.
move the needle to get your ROI back, right? And that ROI can and should look different for different people and what your goals are in that moment in time. However, I think the idea of, and something else you had mentioned, of like, it's only, I could use ChatGPT myself. And it's like, you can,
Sure.
sure, you can. However, do you know what to prompt it to make this happen? Do you, and how long, and we'll take it a step further. If you do, how long is it going to take you to get from the idea you have and want help ChatGPT to help you with to being able to push the content out? And that's the thing with Iris is it could take less than 5 minutes, even when you want to fine tune it a little bit. And like sometimes I tell Iris a 10-minute story, and then Iris pushes, like, okay, great ideas. Which one of these would you like? We shouldn't do all of this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. Okay. Um, and like we will get there, but it's like even that, like I can create content very quickly, get my point across using my same words, just
Mm,
looking a little differently. And that's the same thing, John also helps people create their own versions of Iris. So one of the offers I now have is my podcast growth partner with Jonna helped me build that helps podcast hosts create their titles, description, helps with monetization. When it eliminates those, on average 12 to 20 hours a host might be spending down to less than 30 minutes a week on an episode. And so when you look at those time access back, right? I remember as well when Jonna and I met, we had a conversation like, how many hours you work? And I was like, you don't even want to know how many hours I work. And John was like, yeah, I mean, I work X amount. I'm like, you're lying. Like you're straight up kind of lying to me. And I didn't say that to her, but I'd get certain entrepreneurs who'd come to me and be like, yeah, I work 4 to maybe that 8 hour a week. And I'm like, day. And it might not all be all 5 days a week. And I'm like, how? No. And then through like talking with Jonna and scaling back, really a big chunk for me was how much I was spending on like trying to write pieces of content. I
yeah.
was like, oh, wait, I can work those 4 to 8 hours because I'm saving 3 hours staring at my computer trying to leverage ChatGPT to create something.
Yeah.
And so I think a big piece of it is that too, is like, what is your time worth? I recently even saw, and I love your thoughts on this, from Cody Sanchez, I think is her last name. I saw a video she did was like in the aspect of if you make $100 an hour, but then you go home and clean your house, instead paying someone $50 to clean it or $100 to clean it, you've actually lost money.
Yeah.
Because if you could have made $100 per hour working 2 hours instead of cleaning for the 2 hours, you would have only spent, and for all intents and purposes, for her analogy, it was the cleaning person's $50. You actually lost $150 because you weren't focusing on pieces that was the finish line of your conversion. And
Mhm.
so it's also with the conversion method with Iris of how much time, if you're not using it, are you actually spending, even though you're not seeing in a like hardcore way dollars coming out of your bank account in that.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important question to ask.
100%. And actually, it's funny you say that because it was just yesterday I saw Layla Hermosi share a very similar story. And it was the same day where I'm like, okay, honey, we need to get the cleaning lady in here because this house is a mess. And I've been working more as of late because, and I don't know if you even know this, but behind the scenes, I've been working with developers to launch a new iteration of Iris, a new and improved next level, even better writing and in its own interface. So sometimes, you have to put in that time, but I know that is me banking towards a bigger output when all of that back end work is done. So I'm like, what is my per hour worth versus paying $150, having two cleaning ladies here, and within 3 hours they're gone and this place is spotless. Yeah, I could save that $150, but how much could I make in 4 hours because there's two of them cleaning my house? And it's just a no-brainer. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much they cost themselves by making inefficient decisions and not even asking. how many times I meet a person like, so what do you make per hour? Like what do you want to make per hour? And people hem and haw because they don't look at those numbers. They don't treat their business like an actual CEO. They don't even know what P&L means. What is a KPI? None of that. And there's a while that I was like, I don't really like those numbers because I was rejecting corporate after I left. But when you have both, the flow and the discipline of looking at your numbers and treating your business like a business, everything changes. Your decision making changes and your systems improve so that you can work 4 hours a day, sometimes 4 hours a week, depending on what I'm launching in that season. Like right now, it's a lot heavier because I'm developing something for the future, thinking about the big picture vision. But at the end of the day, like, where are you investing your time and energy and money? And as you said, you had to make the investment. We worked together to build an asset, a sellable asset that not only saves you time and energy now as the delivery person within your offers. You can use this tool that you built on your frameworks and your IP, but now you can turn around and leverage that as a business asset to sell, business to consumer, which is huge. So if anybody's listening and you haven't thought of this, think about one area of your business, whether it's operationally, whether it's like you as a coach, any aspect of your business where it is a task that is rooted in your unique frameworks and intellectual property, that you could take that and install it into an AI to automate that entire process for you. And how much time and energy and money could that save you and then make you if you were to turn that into a sellable asset?
Well, and that was something we talked very early on when we started working together and you were helping me with content. I got to a place I was like, the way the podcasting industry is there are also individuals who are really in a spot of just trying to make a difference, or are the nonprofits, or just doing it with fun, with
Mhm.
for fun with their family, right? And they might not ever, care about making $1 on their podcast, but they also want to spend more time with their family, or want to make sure it can grow, or this or that. And and it's important to be able to give information to them, right? Or, hey, I want to keep things in house. As my business, I still want to have my fingers on it. I'm not at a place, right, as well, not a place for someone to do it for me yet. And I know you've gotten that as well. It's like, okay, well, here's a tool. And I think it's important you mentioned there is it has intellectual property in it. The podcast growth partner, for example, we sat down and we built that out. And John and I sat with me and I had pages and pages of like, no, this is how it should be looked at. This is how, no, that's too long. And she'd be like, okay, like I took step by step of what I did in certain tasks and how I looked at the industry and where the industry is, and I fed that all into documents, and then we'd have conversations and we'd fine tune it so that if you have a tool, which it is very much a tool like Iris, a tool like the podcast growth partner, you have Zhanna in your back pocket. You would have me in your back pocket. But if you went to do it yourself, you're not going to get the same results that Iris is giving you, that the podcast growth partner is giving you. It is a tool to be able to use where you have that person's intellectual property in it. You have the knowledge that you want to have otherwise to be able to leverage in everything else you're doing. So I think that's a very big aspect of what you mentioned is understanding that when you bring someone on, when you have a tool or you create a tool, what is the thing that is setting you apart and making sure it really represent the knowledge. And a fold to that is like, yeah, there are times now where I will use what I've built because again, it has every piece of my framework, every piece of what I've thought, and I'll run something through it. And I'm like, hey, help me with this or make this. What are the optimized tags that I need on the back end for the coding of this podcast? Because it knows exactly that information, but then I could be working on that piece for a client and something else at the same time. Um, so, but that being said, and that piece of business advice you also gave of understanding where is something you can add value, but also saving yourself time in the tools. It's like the podcast growth partner, when I started using it to help my clients, even if they didn't just immediately sign on for it, it was like, okay, it's saving my workflow hours. I the podcast audits I do, I leverage that for pulling back end data. That back end data used to take me 6 hours. Now it takes me 30 minutes to pull to then be able to evaluate it, right? So I'm doing the same things, but I'm able to save time in some of, like, again, that gathering where it's like, you're still getting all my information, my take on it, and my honest response on it. However, pulling the data can take a lot of time. So for you, what is a piece of business advice you believed early on in creating your business, um, that now you completely disagree with and you think more entrepreneurs should also be thinking about?
Mm. So this is something that I agreed on in early on that I don't agree with anymore.
Yeah.
I think this was more of an incorrect way of looking at things, and I think a lot of people resonate with this, but the belief that me, you, are the only person that can do it well,
Mm.
that can do it at its best. And I still weeble wobble around that one because this is why I created Iris. Because now I know she's like a twin of me and she still gets it wrong sometimes and I have to like tweak it. But, because I believe that there are no two identical perspectives and there are no two lenses that match, it is still hard to relinquish that control. But I think the biggest piece of advice I will tell you is rather than looking at it that way, because it may be true right now, but that's also your frame of reality, is instead flip the narrative to instead look for someone that is actually better than you at a particular task that's not your zone of genius, that is pulling you out of being able to scale the business, that you can delegate to and allow them to actually excel at that task for you to free up more time and energy and resources in your business.
And that's I think a really big key too, and something you've mentioned throughout this conversation is, where do you want your time and resources and zone of genius to sit? Like identifying what you do, why you do it, and how you want to allocate time to serving those individuals. I think it is really important to be able to take a business from, you know, early up to that next level, whatever that next level is. If it's a 5, 6, 7, 8 figure business, being able to go, okay, where does my time need to be? And also asking your question, like, what do you hate doing?
That's where you
Like,
start. Yeah.
where are the tasks that, yes, you need to deliver this for clients, or you need to do this for your business? You just utterly just push yourself in a place of like, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, or
Mhm.
no, it's not your zone of genius, so you're like, I want to be doing more of the other thing, because your time is valuable, and as you grow, like, we all only have the same amount of hours in the day. How do you want to allocate those hours? The other thing I want to ask you is, like, going back a little bit, how do you help someone take what feels messy or ordinary in everyday life and moments and turn it into content that actually connects as well as sales? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times we can all be like, oh, nothing happened today, nothing
Yeah.
really.
Well, and it's interesting. It's about, and it takes time. Sometimes in the beginning, it takes a little bit of time, a couple weeks to play with the AI. The way that I built Iris was intended to be very, it's a two-way conversation. Her strategic side coupled with the copywriter side, understanding human psychology, really helps in being able to have that back and forth conversation, because the goal is to help elicit your ability to connect to your emotional experience much more easily. What I notice a lot of the time is most people will answer my questions when we first connect, or if they have some sort of resistance to going deeper, very superficially, or they'll tell me what they think I want to hear, or or their audience might want to hear, or they'll say it from the level of I think rather than this is what I know is the experience. So that just tells me that that person has an issue with embodiment. They're disconnected from their emotional experience and they're overthinking things. So for me, if that person doesn't have any of those limitations and they go straight into storytelling, I literally just take their raw reflection of something that happened recently. We put it into Iris. It can be the most raw, most like grammar and spelling error mess, and she will turn it into content gold for you. I will give you an example of this. I had a client, I asked her like what's something relevant to the last couple of days, and she was just an amazing storyteller. She just recently wrote a book and she just voice noted me this incredible rich story. And I was like, I've turned that into piece of content. Let me just do it for her now. I transcribed it. I put it into Iris, the Iris that knew about her and her business, and yeah, gave her a little bit of context with regards to this person and their social media presence. And then a post came. She loved it. That post generated 6 leads in 24 hours. She'd never generated a lead in her life from her content. Why I tell you this story though, is because I took that same exact prompt, that raw transcription, and I tested it in 3 other AI writing platforms. I'm not going to name the names. One of them spit back error cannot compute, no matter how many times I tried it, because I wanted to test the exact same scenario. Literally copy the same exact prompt and paste it in these other really great writing AI tool systems. Nothing wrong with them, they're just different. And one, like I said, error can't compute. The second one came back really generic, super chat GPT. Like you could tell a robot wrote it. It was just like yuck. And then the third one did something similar. None of them gave anything close to the original output that I would ever feel good about posting online. So we couldn't even test the metrics on it, like as far as like generating leads. But based on my experience reading them, they would never generate a lead at all. So it's like, just tell me, be yourself and tell me what you are living on a day to day. That's it. It's that simple.
Well, I love that. And I can't believe our time is up.
I
I'm
know.
like,
Finally.
there's
There's
so
so
many
much more.
there's so much more we could go into because really I think one thing I people don't give the AI, and I think anyone who speaks with you quickly realizes like the conversion method in Iris is something needed in everyone's business to
Thank you.
make it not only smooth and content that you're proud of, like you just said in that story, you want to be proud of what you're saying and putting out on social media. It does represent you. If you feel ick by it, most people will too. But also it saves you so much time in deliverables
Yes.
and sitting and feeling unknown or all these other fears that can and negative thoughts that can creep in. Yeah, I'm really happy we got to have this conversation. I feel like there's so much more. So we hopefully it we get to revisit this down the road.
I
But
hope.
Jonna, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me across all platforms as Zhanna Blazej. I believe LinkedIn, you have to put a dash. So my first name dash my last name. But if you just look me up, you'll find me. I'm usually the first one that pops up. Not a lot of us with a Z in the first name and the last name. And then you can also visit my website, www.zhannablazej.com. And yeah, those are the best ways to connect with me: LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
Well, thank you, Jana, for all of your insight today. This was really an amazing conversation.
Do you want me to talk about the little freebie? Because I didn't
I'm
say.
gonna, yeah, you could talk about that now, and then I'm going to go into our few key takeaways from our conversation
Oh,
today.
okay, cool. Um, And if you want to learn about how you can turn your online presence into predictable revenue, I've created a completely free guide that you can follow to learn about the conversion method principles and the frameworks that we talked about today, including exactly how to craft a high conversion piece of content. And you can access that completely for free on my website at zhannablazej.com/guide.
Well, thank you, Zhanna, for that freebie that anyone who listens to this conversation can get. And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation, though I feel like everything was gold, just like Irish and the conversion method and how Zhanna connects with people. But a few of those include conversion content has a direct call to action. I think a lot of times we forget we want the leads, we want the conversions, but we don't straight up tell them, here's the next steps. So I love that Jana had brought that up, as well as speak from lived experiences. Jana brought up that a lot of times we start we get to a point and we start speaking as the expert, and that is how information's coming across. But people want to know you've been there, you've been in the trenches, you get it. You can say, yeah, this was my pain point, this is why I created, just like Jana did with Iris. Where did Iris and the conversion method stem from? Was her own lived experiences. So she knows what it feels like. She knows what goes on through your mind. She knows the rewards it can eat. And so I think that is really important as well as three for when we're creating posts in a week, there should be three of you giving content and one ask content. So, as Jana mentioned, not every post should be trying to have that strong CTA, should be asking you to do something. It should be, hey, here's information about me, right? Those nurture posts, and do one ask. And as Jana mentioned, in the times of, yeah, you are having a launch, you are, going through certain periods. Obviously, you can do more, but give that space so it doesn't become a white noise in social media, as well as flip the narrative of what is something that isn't working in your business. Instead of coming from a place of like, oh, I could do that, what isn't working that you want to do better? And bring on individuals that know what they're doing, can
Yes.
help you, can alleviate time, can alleviate the process and frustration, but also just know it's being done correctly. This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Zhanna Blazej. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.